Have you ever met someone who could be charming one day, the victim the next, and somehow always leave you questioning yourself? It feels like you're dealing with different people. Psychology says you're not. You're watching the same defense mechanism, wearing different masks. Today, we'll uncover the psychology behind the 6 major types of narcissists. Not just how they behave, but why they behave that way. Because beneath every personality lies the same hidden psychological need. And once you understand that hidden psychology, you'll stop seeing 6 different personalities and start seeing one mind protecting itself in 6 different ways. Let's start with the mask most people recognize. Number 1, the Grandiose Narcissist. This is the textbook narcissist, the confident, charismatic, look-at-me type. But confident is exactly the word psychology would tell you to be suspicious of. Picture the guy at a dinner party who turns every story back to himself. You ran a marathon. He ran 2 faster. You got promoted. His job's harder. Looks like pure ego, but psychology tells a different story. Underneath that oversized self-image is a self-image that can't survive on its own. Psychologists believe the grandiosity works like armor, a fragile sense of worth that can't tolerate failure, criticism, or even feeling ordinary, so the mind inflates itself to cover the gap. That's why admiration becomes addictive. Every compliment, every win, is proof that quiets the doubt for a moment, and it's why the smallest question sets him off. To you, it's a disagreement. To him, it's a threat to the whole structure holding his identity up, so he protects it the only way he knows how. He talks over you, shrinks your wins, rewrites the story so he's the hero, and if you call it out, suddenly you're the problem. Not because he's simply arrogant, but because letting the armor crack means facing the fragile self it was built to hide. In a strange way, he isn't trying to prove he's better than you. He's trying to convince himself. And the people closest to him become collateral in a war they can't even see. But superiority is just one way the mind protects a fragile ego. The next type does it by looking like the exact opposite. Number 2, the covert narcissist. If the grandiose narcissist protects his ego by looking superior, this one does it by looking wounded. They're quiet, sensitive, often visibly insecure, which is exactly why they're so hard to spot. Nobody suspects narcissism in the person who seems to think so little of themselves, but psychologists call this vulnerable narcissism, and underneath the self-doubt sits the same quiet belief: I'm different, I deserve more, people just fail to see it. Here's the psychology that drives it. Admitting fault would mean facing that fragile self directly, so the mind builds a different kind of armor: victimhood. If life disappoints them, the cause is never them. It's the friends who didn't appreciate them, the world that never gave them their due. As long as someone else carries the blame, their self-image stays untouched. And that shifting of blame quietly lands on you. Conversations leave you feeling guilty without knowing why, slowly responsible for an emotional world that was never yours to manage. That's the trap. They don't demand your admiration. They extract your care. The grandiose narcissist wants you to admire him. The covert narcissist wants you to rescue her. Different mask, same fragile self underneath, and the same need to protect it at your expense. Number 3, the communal narcissist. Not all of them want to be admired for winning. Some want to be admired for being good. This is the friend who never lets you forget the favor, the volunteer who needs you to notice how much they gave, the one who's endlessly generous, as long as someone's watching. On the surface, it's kindness, and that's what makes it slippery. The help is real. The problem is what it's for. For the communal narcissist, generosity isn't the goal, it's the evidence. Every good deed quietly proves the same thing: I'm a better person than you. And once your worth is built on being the most caring one in the room, kindness stops being a choice and starts being a supply line. That's why it curdles the moment it goes unnoticed. Watch what happens when someone else gets the credit, or their sacrifice goes unthanked. The warmth vanishes, and out comes the scorekeeping, everything they've done for you, listed back with interest. Because psychologically, being unappreciated doesn't just disappoint them, it threatens the entire identity holding them together. The mask here is compassion, but underneath it isn't love for others. It's the same fragile self fishing for proof that it matters. Number 4, the somatic narcissist. Some people need to be admired for what they've done. This one needs to be admired for how they look. The body is the whole identity: the fitness, the fashion, the sex appeal, the face in every photo tilted at just the right angle. On the surface, it looks like confidence, maybe vanity, and that's what hides it. Because for the somatic narcissist, beauty was never a feature. It's the foundation their whole sense of worth is built on. It usually starts young, when they learn attention comes for how they look, not for who they are, praised for the face, noticed for the body, quietly taught that value is something other people hand you, not something you own. So the mirror stops showing a face and starts showing a verdict. Every compliment says you still matter. Every flaw says you're slipping. That's why the obsession never rests. The gym, the filters, the endless need to be seen isn't pride. It's maintenance on a foundation that's always cracking. And watch what happens when the looking fades. When someone younger walks in, when age does what age does. The panic isn't about wrinkles. It's a self that was only ever built in other people's eyes, sensing there's nothing underneath to stand on. The mask here is beauty, but underneath it's the same fragile self, terrified of the day nobody's watching. Number 5. The cerebral narcissist. You know the type? Picture the guy who can't let a single thing slide. You mispronounce a word, he corrects it. You share an opinion, he turns it into a debate you didn't agree to have. Mention a fact, and he's already explaining why you've got it slightly wrong. It looks like intelligence flexing. But watch him the moment he's the one who's wrong. The jaw tightens, the voice climbs, and suddenly a small factual slip is being defended like his life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. For the cerebral narcissist, being smart isn't a trait, it's the entire self, and every argument won is one more brick in the wall holding that self up. Which is why two ordinary words become almost impossible for him to say, I don't know. To you, being wrong is a mild inconvenience. To him, it's a crack in the identity he spent his whole life building. So he doesn't listen to understand, he listens to reload, waiting for the gap where he can prove himself right again. And here's the quiet irony, the person most terrified of being wrong is usually the one who learns the least, because you can't grow while you're busy defending. The mask here is intelligence. But underneath it's the same fragile self, mistaking winning for worth. And when that hunger for superiority fuses with manipulation, paranoia, and a total absence of empathy, you get the last and most dangerous type of all. Number 6, the malignant narcissist. Every type so far has been protecting the same fragile self through admiration, victimhood, kindness, beauty, or being right. This one protects it through control. Admiration isn't enough anymore. They don't want to be adored, they want to hold the strings. Psychologists describe this as narcissism fused with something darker, manipulative, antisocial, and often deeply paranoid traits, the most dangerous combination of the 6. In their world, trust is a weakness to be used, kindness is bait, and every relationship is quietly a contest for power. And here's the psychology underneath it. The chaos they can't stand isn't out there, it's inside them. Controlling other people is how they avoid ever facing it. Every person they dominate, every situation they manipulate is one more way of keeping that inner disorder at arm's length. Power isn't ambition for them, it's emotional survival. Which is exactly why losing control doesn't just frustrate them, it terrifies them. And terror in this type comes out as rage, revenge, or cruelty. And that's the thread running through all 6. Different masks, different behaviors, but the same hidden goal, guarding a self too fragile to face the world unarmed. The biggest mistake people make is thinking narcissism is just an oversized ego. It's closer to the opposite, a self so unsteady it has to be defended every waking moment. Strip away the admiration, the victimhood, the beauty, the intelligence, the control, and underneath every single mask is the same trembling question. Who am I if no one's there to tell me I matter? The biggest mistake people make is believing narcissism is simply an oversized ego. But as you've seen, psychology suggests it's often something much deeper. Each type protects itself in a different way, through admiration, through victimhood, through kindness, beauty, intelligence, or control. But beneath every mask is the same fragile question, who am I without validation? And perhaps that's the most important lesson. Understanding the psychology behind narcissism isn't just about recognizing these people. It's about recognizing how the human mind protects itself when identity becomes more important than reality. If you found this video insightful, take a second to like it and share it with someone who would find it fascinating. And if you're curious about the hidden psychology behind everyday behaviors, subscribe, because every week we explore the science of the human mind in a way that's easy to understand. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.